Hello, everybody. Welcome. My KW brothers and sisters. Happy to be up here and share what I know. Um, so, I want to talk about why, as an industry, we don't attract enough people. We tend to buy people, buy leads, we tend to chase people around. But at some point, if you want to have a great business and a great life, it's more about who calls you rather than who you call. So I've focused my efforts on attracting people, and I'd like to share a little bit with you today on that. So the first thing I'd like to get into is, we're in a social media world, and we're kind of wired for the wrong things, in my opinion, to be an agent. We are wired to be liked, and we're wired to be admired, but that's not what sells real estate. If you look at the amount of real estate agents in the country right now, and you look at the amount of homeowners in the country, there's about one real estate agent for every 50 homeowners. So there are a lot of us. If you go to a wedding with 150 people, there are 3 real estate agents walking around. So, how do you cut through the clutter? How do you attract people in that environment? I always say that it's not being liked and it's not being admired that draws people. Think like if you're being rushed to the hospital and you have a pain in your chest. You're not looking for a doctor that you like or admire. What are you looking for? A doctor that you trust, right? This is a business based on trust. So we attract 95% of our 150 million in sales based on building a reservoir of trust. So with the limited time that we have today, I'm going to get into how you can generate trust when you meet with somebody to list their home initially. I'm doing a class tomorrow at 3:45 called How to Attract 150 Million in Sales. I'm going to get into much more depth over the course of an hour, but with the limited amount of time we have today, let's talk about how you develop trust in a very short period of time with somebody that's called you. So there are 3 main components that I want to talk about. Number 1 is intentions. Number 2 is communication, and number 3 is competency. Those are 3 aspects of building trust when you're meeting with somebody for the first time. The mistake that we make is we jump to competency. We're so anxious to tell people how good we are that we do all of the talking, we do very little listening, and we're hammering away, I'm number 1, I've sold this many homes, I dominate this market, blah, blah, blah. That's not what you're there for, and that's not how to start a trust-building relationship with somebody. So that's why I put competency third. What somebody's trying to determine when they're meeting with you for the first time, number 1 is, what are your intentions? Intentions are so important. When you think about forming a relationship with somebody that you trust, you want to know, are they in it mostly for me? That's going to come through by the way you communicate, by the questions you ask, and it's really important that you get into that first. I like to talk about our team's purpose. Why are we here? What do we do that's different? Why, will this impact you in a positive way? For every minute I talk, I probably ask 10 minutes of questions to understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish. I always start every meeting with, hey, if you closed your eyes and you described to me the ideal scenario, like how does this play out? And then we go from there. So I'm using intentions to explain to them, why we're different. Next is communication skill. Whoever hires you, when they're sitting there listening to you, they're thinking to themselves, this is a gentleman or a woman that I'm going to be working with over a period of months, and am I comfortable with their communication style? Communication starts before the meeting, so we always have a teammate, an admin person confirm a meeting. That establishes professionalism. Oftentimes we'll send some materials in advance of the meeting. I kind of discussed how we start the meeting, and then there's always very professional follow-up afterwards. So I'm trying to communicate to them, this is what I'm like to work with. I'm not going to talk over you. I'm not going to talk about myself. This isn't about me. You're the hero of the story. I'm the guide, to quote the Story brand. So again, the second aspect is communication. The third aspect and the final aspect is competency. Get to that last. Understand and have the confidence that you're there because they believe you're competent. You don't have to dwell on that. And if you're newer in the business and you don't have a track record, then kind of explain your brokerage's competency rather than your own. So that's how I develop trust in an initial meeting. Now, we only have so many of those, right? And great clients are out of transaction more than they're in transaction. And by that I mean to draw in, to attract the amount of business we do. We understand that 95% of our relationship with the client is going to be post this transaction and pre the next transaction. So there are all sorts of things that we do to keep in touch, to add value. My style isn't to be calling people and to say, who do you know that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Our communication is value added. How can I help? What else do you have going on in life? People look at me as a problem solver. They ask all sorts of advice outside of real estate, and that's how I know if I'm building trust. So I wanted to give you one little tool that I use. It's been really effective for that gap in between when you sell somebody a home and when they're going to transact with you again in 5, 7, 10 years. And that is the contractor and vendor list. We invest heavily in having a really robust, quality group of contractors that we vet, that we make sure are responsive. They're not the least expensive, but they're really capable. They care about our clients. They know that we're going to continue to refer people to them. So we developed this great list of contractors and vendors. What mistake I see a lot of my brothers and sisters make is that when somebody calls you for that list, if you kind of go out there and say, we have this list, they just send the list to the person. That's a one-time transaction with your client. What we do is when somebody calls us and says, hey, do you have an electrician? Rather than saying, oh, let me send you a list that you can look at, what I'll do is I'll say, yes, we have a fantastic electrician. It's ABC Electric. But let me do this. Let me call them, make sure that they know that you're going to be calling, and make sure that they take care of you. I'm going to let them know that you're a really important client of ours. And think about the trust and the relationship that builds rather than just kind of firing off a contractor list that we all have. So that's a way to kind of build and retain trust when you're no longer in the midst of a transaction. And one other point that I want to make that I think is really important is that people continue to come to me, they continue to come to our team because we perform. We can only perform when people listen to us. So part of the reason why I do the business that I do, that our team does the business that our team does, is because we work with people that will listen to us. And so many of us meet with somebody and they're kind of saying all the wrong things, right? They don't want to hear the price that you have. They're not crazy about the home prep. The timing is isn't right. On and on and on. One of the reasons why we have the track record we have is that we understand that every client isn't a great client, and that our best clients are the ones that listen to us, because when they listen to us, you know, everything goes smoothly. The sign goes in the ground, the sold sign goes up immediately. They work with us again. Their neighbors see what happened. The neighbors work with us. So much of building trust is understanding that it's not just clients that pick us, we pick our clients. So that's kind of an overview of, in a short 10-minute span, some of the things that we do to attract people in droves, 95% of our business. I'm going to get into far more depth tomorrow at 3:45 in the session on how to attract $150 million in sales. And, we're going to get into, all aspects of what it takes to do that. So thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure. And may we all have a great 2025.